Good morning. Welcome to the 47-minute webinar. We are going to jump in pretty quick, but this entire year we're doing a little celebration. It's our 25th anniversary of Stroman and Associates. So round of applause for Kent Stroman.
And Aaron Stroman.
25
Hey, Aaron, you,
down,
you
25
remember
to go.
25 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah. And be on the lookout for, we're going to do some, probably over the summertime, we're going to do some in-person celebration in Tulsa. Well, I think Tulsa, Bartlesville, Kansas City. So uh, we haven't locked those down yet, but we're going to be celebrating all year long. But today we're talking about fundraising. And this is a question that we've got a lot, things that we hear just in the industry. And so we want to talk about the difference between fundraising and sales. A lot of times people will speak about fundraising as if it's exactly the same as sales. And we want to address that. We want to address the similarities, the differences. So that's the topic for today. And I just want to start off with the disclaimer. If you've come from a sales background and now you're in fundraising or development, this is a safe place. We're not going to pick on you or bash you too bad. But one of the big items that we want to address is not all sales experience translates to fundraising. It's pretty different animal, pretty different beast. And so it's just something to consider if that is your background, or even probably what's more likely, if you're in leadership looking to hire someone in development. If a person has experience in sales and they have no experience in fundraising, they may think, well, it's a perfect carryover, perfect translation, and there might need to be some training to bring that person up to speed. So that's what we want. We love fundraising. We love seeing nonprofits extend their reach and mission. We never want money to be what holds people back. So we're in your corner. That's what we're going to talk about today. But with that little disclaimer said, I'm going to throw things over to Kent Stroman. And I think you had some little comparison questions
Yeah.
that you wanted to bring to the table.
Yeah, in just a minute, I'm going to ask us to just do a little bit of participation. So it's just after 10 o'clock in the morning, time for some physical exercise. Okay. So everybody, thanks for having your camera on. Maybe put your fingers up in front of the camera. See if you actually have some. Okay. Now we're going to do some exercises. Just kind of get started. Push ups, push down, push side. Okay, hands down. So in a minute, I want to just do actual show of hands. So this is going to be a pretty simple poll. First question: who would say that in being asked for a contribution, so you're the prospective donor, who has had a good experience in that part of fundraising? You had a good experience being asked for a contribution. Hands up, hands down. Okay. Now let's flip the coin. Who's had a bad fundraising experience? You've been the victim of a fundraiser. Certainly I have. Okay, we all have. Okay. Now, same questions as it relates to sales. Who's had a bad sales experience? You were the object of the sales. Glenn, I see that look on your face. Oh, Aaron's two hands up. Yeah, hands down. And what about who's had a good experience in a sales thing?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so we've all had we have that commonality, and like Aaron said, it's not to kind of demonize one and glorify the other, but I think it's important to recognize differences. One area of difference is the vocabulary that we use. And Aaron, I know you've got some thoughts to touch on that a little bit later. As I was preparing for this, I thought about one of the worst sales experiences I've had. I'm just going to tell you, it involved a used car. Now, I don't know what your experience is, but you feel like you've been taken hostage, locked in a room, you cannot escape, and it's just, I don't know, for me, can just be really unpleasant. I'll tell you, for my wife, it's even more unpleasant for her than for me. But as I was thinking about one of the best sales experiences ever that I had, actually, it was in Kansas City. I went to a car dealer to buy a used car, left the owner of a new car, which was really surprising, but it was a fantastic experience. And so, Aaron, how do we get from one to the other? What's the connection? What's the disconnect between sales and fundraising?
Well, I'm going to throw up.
Oh,
I'm
don't, please don't.
going to throw. I should finish that. I'm going to throw up a poll onto the screen, and we're going to launch this. And so, this is just to maybe not using our raising of hands, but clicking of buttons. When you think of you look at the poll, when someone asks for money, what most determines whether you say yes. So we're putting ourselves in the donor shoes again. Is it you trust the person asking, you trust the organization's leadership, you believe in the mission, or the urgency and deadline to cause you to act? So got one person, if you want to respond to those.
I
And
don't feel like it's recognizing my clicks.
oh,
Maybe I'm disqualified.
you might be. So we're seeing uh, the majority go saying that they believe in the mission, and I think that's a um, good consideration to take as we dive into the topic. Well, yeah, and we'll do that. So here's the first point that I was wanting to make is one of the biggest differences between fundraising and sales is the relationship versus a transaction. And I know a lot of salesmen, business guys who say that they approach business as a relationship. And I think that's a great way to approach it. But at the end of the day, if you're in sales, you're making a transaction. That's how performance is recorded. That's how a business generates income. There has to be this exchange of money for services or money for goods. And um, and that's just the way it is. Okay, so that's the way it is. You can do sales without the relationship, and we get that every time we walk into a big box store. You know, you go into a Target or Walmart, you don't have a personal shopper who has a relationship with you taking you through the aisles and learning about your family and how your day's going. No, you're exchanging money for goods, and that's the transaction. Whereas fundraising, especially major and mega gift fundraising, it should be about the relationship instead of the transaction. And if you do the transaction approach, which you can in fundraising, if you do that though, you might get a gift or two, but it's going to end there. Transaction happens, it's over, and that's the end of it. Whereas if we engage with the relationship, if we go back to our poll that we just took, everyone was saying, well, I believe in the mission. That's why I want to give my money. And that's really what motivates most people to make a in-kind donation is they want to see that mission expand. They want to be a part of the mission. And when there can be a relationship there, they want to feel like they're part of the mission. Maybe they don't have enough time to volunteer, but they have enough money to make a gift. That's how they're entering in. And it's in the true sense of the word, it's not a transaction. They're donating money. They're not getting anything, a service or product in return. It's a true gift. And so that's where we're going to start with the relationship versus transaction as we talk about the difference between fundraising and sales. Um, Sales can start cold, right? Fundraising usually can't. So building the relationship is step one when it comes to fundraising. And then the other big difference is this idea of if you're in the sales seat, you have a quota. By this time, you need to make this many transactions, or else there will be some sort of consequence. almost the opposite is true with fundraising. We know by both experience and by data that the more time we give donors to make a gift, the more generous they can be. So instead of trying to cut things off, all right, you need a quota in your fundraising efforts, giving our donors more time actually gives us more time to build a relationship with them. So we're not trying to be pushy or um, head towards that transaction. We're trying to aim for that relationship. So that's where I'm going to start. Kent, any thoughts you want to expand when it comes to
Yeah.
relationship versus transaction?
Well, as I was listening to you, I think not only the relationship versus transaction, but the one of the differences tends to be the is the focus or the object, if you would, tangible or intangible. And so you use the example of going to the store. I give away the money and I get something tangible. Um, Twinkies. How does that sound? Middle of the morning. Um,
Horrible.
So, but ultimately, people talk about lots of times in fundraise, they say we're selling the intangible. And as a donor, what do I get when I make a transaction or when I make a gift? What do I receive in exchange for that? Well, this is an interesting place where actually my background in finance comes into play. According to the IRS, and if you look at the receipts that you issue, what does it say? No goods or services have been received in exchange for the contribution. And then there's this carve out. I'm going to speak Latin for a minute. Who's heard of this? Quid pro quo. Say that fast 3 times. Okay. What is quid pro quo? That's something in exchange for something. I'll do this, and if you'll do that, and the required language on the correspondence has to state that we've not received any tangible goods or services in exchange for the contribution. So very, very different. But I'm just curious, and I'd love to hear from our room today. As a donor, if our donors don't receive something tangible, what does the donor get? What does the donor get when a gift is made?
So for me, I'm thinking about this spring and a donation I made, and it was to a children's cancer group. It's called what is it called? Uh, K Club, um, and it was named after somebody's son. Like the K was his first initial. He died of cancer. And the type of group that it is, they raise money so that they can do things for kids with cancer that are in the hospital or around the community and for their families. Um, and I was eager to give because of my relationship to, say, my son pass of cancer and not knowing he had cancer. So for me, that's a way to honor his memory. And what I get out of it is just this feeling of giving somebody else something that I didn't get. Like I want them to have opportunities that I still wish I would have had.
Hmm. And Aaron, as Glenn was talking about that, reminds me of Cabot kids um, who do something very little. Yeah, so you get when you receive something very meaningful, but it's not something you can physically touch,
Right,
right?
right.
Something that you
I just,
feel and
yeah,
sense.
it's a way to honor him. For me, that's
Yeah,
that's a great way to honor
yeah,
him.
yeah. Eric, Aaron, did you have something?
Mine was right in line with Gwen's. I mean, it's a feeling of that you're helping somehow, you're making a difference. So same thing, it is definitely intangible, but it's definitely based on a feeling and a hope, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and what donors receive, I mean, what we receive when we give, it's very real, but it doesn't meet that tangible definition. And even that, I think, could be argued, but but that is a big distinction between the two. And so I think a lot of times it's important for us to be alert to the quid pro quo. I will tell you, there was somebody who was, I would call him either in a decision making or influencing role, where when we're talking charitable contributions, he was always very eager. What am I going to get out of it? And that's a bit of a concern as a fundraiser, right? Is somebody making a gift? I did a campaign one time where I came in the middle of it. They, excuse me, this was set up not as a fundraising campaign, but as a sales contest. I mean, everything was selling, naming from, benches to shades to this. This was a athletic facility, and one of the best things we did was told them just to put that away because they were diluting the charitable motivation. They really had squeezed all the charitable motivation out of it, and they were just selling stuff. And I don't know about you, but I'll tell you, the selling of stuff like that took all the meaningfulness away from me. And it was interesting to see how the flow of funds changed when they got out of sales. And I think our culture kind of creates that. And I'm just a really visible example, whether it's Girl Scout cookies or Boy Scouts popcorn, same thing. How about I take out half the cookies, put them in a box, double the price? That's fundraising. Okay. And it's the cookies are good. Oh, why did I even bring that up? But to me, that's really not the essence of philanthropy. That's just it's sales pressure. And if you've ever had to say either yes or no to one of those little girls out in front of Lowe's or Walmart, it's a real thing.
Hey, I'm gonna riff here a little bit because there's a technical side of this question that I think you can answer, we can get into, but then even philosophically, one of the ways where we see the transaction and fundraising really cross or intersect is the good old fundraising auction. So you're
Oh,
making a gift, but you're getting the thing, a trip to Hawaii or, whatever the handmade product is that someone donated to the gala. But the technical question is, okay, with the IRS, can any of that money be written off? And if so, which part of it? And then just in general, philosophically, how do you feel about the auction as a fundraising tool?
man, who you asking, Aaron?
I'm asking you.
Oh, you're asking me.
I'm asking you.
A fundraising auction is a very popular and complex fundraising mechanism. So Granny Smith donates a pie. Okay. It's probably made out of Granny Smith apples. I didn't think about that. So that's, I'm giving you, we're not giving tax advice, but I'm going to give you some IRS definitions. There's only one donor in the equation, and that's Granny Smith. And you know what's deductible for her? It's the cost of the flour and the apples and the sugar. Okay. So who does Granny give the pie to? She gives it to the charity. And the charities receive what's called a gift in kind. And then they sell it. And so let's see, I need a volunteer. One of our participants today. Okay, if you're wearing glasses. Oh, thank you, Aaron, for volunteering. So Aaron is feeling very philanthropic today, and it doesn't matter what the other bid is, she's going to bid it up. And I mean, it goes up and up and up, and finally it's sold $10,000. So what did Erica buy? She bought a pie, and you know what the IRS says the value of that pie is?
$10.
$10,000, because that's what you paid for it. And so Aaron did not make a charitable contribution. Now, a lot of times the donors don't think about that. They think I got a free pie and I made a gift of $10,000. So what Aaron's going to get is a receipt that says thank you for buying a pie for $10,000. And with your purchase, we raised $147,000 at the auction. Thank you. And this is going to help our kids, right? But how much of it's deductible? Technically, when Erin finds that out, she's not so happy anymore, right? And Granny, she wants a $10,000 deduction because she donated the pie. Well, Iris values that whatever she spent on the apples and the ground up flour. So um, that's a really common example where there's a disconnect between the expectation and the reality and the experience. But it is very popular and it's fun. But it is also an example of why we know that very few gifts are made because of tax benefit. Maybe we could say there's gifts that are not made because of a lack of tax benefit, right? So anyhow, I don't know, Aaron, if that's kind of in line with what you were looking for,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
was
just a little messy.
curious. And what drives me bonkers is I was just talking to someone the other day, and they were telling me about the results of their gala. And usually the auction kind of goes into that gala space. And he said, well, I think, we end up netting, $10,000 on this event. And the other person who's there was like, well, but tell them what the gross was. I mean, we raised a lot of money, so they raised 60,000, but it cost them 50,000 to get there. And so their net was 10. And I thought, man, that's a lot of work for $10,000. And you could probably go to those same people who bought the apple pie and say, hey, would you just donate $10,000 and we skip the gala? And they might agree to that. They probably would. They might give you $20,000 just to skip the gala. Now, I think there are other functions that galas and fundraising events can fulfill. I think it's great PR. There's some other ways just to get some exposure with people, but man, it hurts my heart when the gala it costs more to do than what it's raising. And I'll use Kansas City as an example. I think the most profitable, I don't know if you call it public, but gala in the city has zero auction. I don't even think they have a meal. I think it's a very short program. People come together and all they do is donate money. And I mean, it's raising more in one night than some of the other really big galas that raise a lot of money. But when we look at the relationship versus transaction, they're not even buying a seat. They're not buying a dinner. They're not buying auction items. They just get together and like to give money. And there's a couple creative experiences in which they do that. But that's what really lights my fire. So, okay, enough on relationship versus transaction. Let's jump to the next one. Alignment versus persuasion. So sales often aims to persuade the buyer to choose a product, to make the transaction, to get the thing. So I've done a couple sales trainings in my prior professional life, and the goal was always you want to get that person, even if they're hesitant, even if they're opposed, you want to persuade them to make the purchase, to buy the thing. Whereas fundraising, we're looking at alignment, and we want to, in fact, one of the first questions in our fundraising framework that's in Asking About Asking, that's in the Asking Academy, is addressing this very thing. Let's see. I wonder if there's any authors on the call that have written books on fundraising. Kent Stroman. What's the first step in the 10-step staircase, and the question that goes along with that?
Let's see. The first step is getting acquainted, and can you ever see yourself involved with our mission?
Yeah, why I like that question. It's all about alignment. We're not asking for a gift. We're not asking for certain amounts. I turned around and grabbed the book off my shelf just as a point of reference. But one of the first things we want to know about someone is there even alignment here? And I think this might be a good place to even interject what our definition for success is for the donor when it comes to fundraising, and how we like to define true success from the donor's perspective is we want to help our donors make well-informed decisions. So there, what's the result of that? Well, it could be a gift. It might not be a gift, but we want them to know exactly how, we want them to be fully informed, know exactly what they're giving to, what their gift is going to do. We want them to know the context of the entire project, especially if we're in a campaign. So the amount is informed as well. And that's how we define success. Did we help our donor make a well-informed decision? Whereas persuasion, it's not, we may not want them to make a well-informed decision. We want them to make a purchase. And so two different motives there, two different approaches. And we want to seek alignment with our donors. And I think if we have an open-handed approach and do what's best for our donors, we can become really secure if our charity or our nonprofit isn't their number one priority. Maybe it's 3, 4, or 5. And we can celebrate that. We can learn about what their top 1, 2, and 3 is and learn more about the donor and just have a pretty realistic view of where we're falling in their priorities and act accordingly. And again, making well-informed decision, sometimes that's where we start, but that's not where we end, because donors find out a little more about what our project, our mission, our new vision, where we're going over the next couple of years. And they say, hey, you used to be number 4. I want to bump you up to number 2 or number 1. So that comes in with alignment instead of persuasion. Other thing with persuasion is persuasion is always felt, and it usually feels uncomfortable. And if our fundraising approach makes people feel uncomfortable, we're probably trying to persuade more than seek alignment. And so that's a good litmus test to see, okay, how are we doing? What's our definition for success? And are we helping our donors succeed and win by making well-informed decisions?
Yeah. Actually, and as I listen to you, it reminds me of this other language that we use, win-win or win-lose. And if we're doing fundraising in a professional, effective way, there aren't any losers, just winners, right? A lot of times in sales, and not all sales, but a lot of times in sales, actually, people will make this comment. Gwen, a couple of weeks ago, we were at the Asking Academy, we were talking about the importance of silence. And a lot of times in sales, you'll hear this, well, you make your pitch and then you stop talking, and then the first person who speaks loses. That's not win-win, right? And one of the things in fundraising, we don't have to worry about the loss ratio if we're using the definition, Aaron, that you gave, and that is success is helping donors make well-informed decisions. And so we want people to have clarity about what is the request, what's the invitation, and then make time so that when we speak, we can win because we're not competing against each other. We're competing for each other. And that's different than what you think about in the typical sales language, sales definition.
Yeah. And man, I'm so proud that a couple of years ago, a team went through the Asking Academy, and one of their top prospects that they were approaching had a medical crisis. And it was a couple, the wife ended up coming down with cancer. And I'm so proud of this. The nonprofit executive director had a background in the medical field. She was a nurse for decades. And she actually advised them, oh, hey, hold on. we don't even need to be talking about a gift right now. You shouldn't consider a gift until you figure this out. And that, I mean, talk about the exact opposite of persuasion is giving good advice, good counsel, and affirming it. Probably they had already made that decision, like, oh, we can't give right now. But to be able to do that, oh my goodness, it was just so proud of them, because there's always that pressure, like, well, you know, we need to keep the lights on, we need to keep payroll going. How do we do this? But that leads us to our third point for this topic, and it's difference between fundraising and sales, having an end game versus no end game. And we were just talking about it. What's the end game for sales? The transaction's the finish line. It's like we can persuade the person, you make the purchase, especially if no refunds or returns is a part of the policy. It's like, got him, can't undo it. You know, we swipe the card, you gave the cash, it's over. Versus if we don't have an end game, okay, you made a gift, what are we still going to do? We're still going to continue the relationship. We call that donor stewardship. We're going to follow up, check up, inform, give updates, care for that person. There's no end game. It goes on and on and on. And that's why there are terms like lifetime value of donors, because it's not just a one-time process. It's a relationship that hopefully does last a lifetime. And so that's how we should be measuring success and the relationship. So do we have an end game, or is it open, basically indefinite? And what I really like about this is it introduces and gives the opportunity for unconditional love to exist, even in the, you know, that love is kind of a strong word, but if we're going to love someone unconditionally, and that could be professionally from the development staff to our donor base, a lot of times we put conditions on that love and say, well, only if you give a gift, or only if you give a gift today or this year. But if it's unconditional, then we can be open-handed. There's no end game. Hey, we're going to love you. And if you don't make a gift this quarter, this year, we approach it. Oh, last year, that's where we get the, you know, side bump, lie bump. Like we can still have relationships with those people that fall into those categories. But if there's an end game, it's going to end the relationship as well, which is not what we want. So I want everyone, we're going to throw this up. Feel free to type in the chat. So far, what's your top takeaway? We still have a grand finale that we want to give you. This is kind of a fun way to cap it up. But as we're thinking about the big takeaway, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to drop that in the comments, or if you're here live on the Zoom call, drop it in the chat. What's your top takeaway for today? Maybe it's a reminder, maybe it's a new perspective on something. Maybe.
Hey, Aaron,
Sure.
let me just mention something. You know, you mentioned earlier something about the hiring process, and I'll tell you that's one of the places where this contrast shows up often. I remember one time I had a client that was hiring a development director, gifts officer, and they asked me as the consultant just to interview one of their top candidates. And so this guy and I, we get on a call, and this guy just takes off running. I'm really good at sales. I can talk to anybody about anything. You've heard that, you know, I could sell a snow cone to an Eskimo, that kind of stuff. And I mean, this guy talked and talked and talked and talked. And I'm the consultant. I'm advising the client, and he just talked nonstop. He proved his point. I can talk to anybody. And so I just listened. And then eventually said, well, he said, what do you think? What are you looking for? Aaron, I see that look on your face. And I said, well, you know, you started off by saying that you could talk to anybody, and then you've demonstrated that. I said, I think I really have a big question for you. He said, what's that? I said, can you listen?
Mm.
And so he started talking about how he could listen. And he talked and talked and talked and talked about that. But I will just say this, in fact, it makes me remember another principle that we emphasize, and that is the most important of a part of a donor call is not what you say, it's what you hear. And so, do we want to prepare for what we say? Yes. But the main thing we want to prepare for is something to listen about and make space so that we can hear what the donor wants to accomplish with their gift, as opposed to, and that's alignment, right? As opposed to persuasion. I can talk, talk, talk and make you want a snow cone when you live in the land of snow. And that is not our objective at all. And so, anyway, I just think as I think about the contrast, that's that that helps me know who to take a second look at and who to run away from when it comes in the hiring process.
Yeah, no kidding. I think that's a great point. The other point is whether it's our staff or our board members, don't expect people to do anything you haven't equipped them to do. And if you haven't equipped them to fundraise, don't expect them to fundraise. But you can equip volunteers, you can equip board members, you can equip staff with fundraising skills, training, education, and that's quite often a lot of the work that we do. I'll throw this up on the screen real quick. Free resource out there. This isn't necessarily fundraising training, but if you're about to enter into a campaign and you want to do a pre-check, man, when you take there's some phases and steps that a campaign should take in the proper order. You get those out of order, problems happen. So I would just encourage you, anyone on the call, and if you're on the YouTube, this link will be posted in the show notes. But take the campaign confidence pre-check. Make sure you're thinking through everything from beginning to end and doing things in the right order. It's a valuable resource for you. We want to give that. And before we give our grand finale while we're on the theme of campaigns, next month's webinar is brought to us by Steven Shattuck. He's with Capital Campaign Pro, and he's going to be talking about the state of capital campaigns. Every year, he does a lot of research with nonprofits across the nation, looking at their campaigns. How did it go? Where did it go well? Where did it go bad? And they have a great, Capital Campaign Pro has a great multi-page PDF report of his studies, and he's going to bring in the presentation to us live. So that's what's coming up next month as far as the webinar goes.
Hey, Aaron, on on resources,
Yes.
let me just give a shout out to a friend of ours. If you're not connected to Kevin Fitzpatrick, really would urge you to connect to him. One visit away is his what do you call that, blog post, whatever. But he does a great job of melding skills that are effective for people who are top in their sales profession, but applying that to fundraising. And yeah, he's brilliant. Great resource. Highly recommend Kevin Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. So here's our grand finale before we get into an announcement, but playing off of some modern culture right now. But sales is tender, fundraising is a wedding. You can't use closing tactics on someone you're trying to build trust with. So this is how we need to approach our fundraising, be in it for the long-term relationship, not just a quick win or closing the deal, but think of it as that long-term commitment.
Yeah, in fact, I recommend that term closing be removed from the vocabulary of fundraise. We don't close gifts. I hear that a lot. We don't close gifts. We open relationships, right? And so we invite gifts or pledges. We celebrate people when they make their charitable decision, and we open the relationship and build on it for the future.
And if you do, or your organization does need help with major and mega gift fundraising, you're like, I know some people that need to be trained, but I'm having a hard time getting them on board. One of our favorite event-based, in-depth fundraising trainings, it's called the Asking Academy, where we bring teams of volunteers, board members, and staff together. We actually bring them together literally for a couple of days on site and then virtually over the course of 5 months. And it is the most comprehensive major gift fundraising training in the United States of America. But we have a summit coming up in June. That's going to be our next one later in October this year. And Gwen, who's on the call, she went through our one in February, but that's there as well, askingacademy.com if you want some more information. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to everyone for being involved with this webinar. We'll look forward to next month's with Stephen Shattuck, and may your approach to fundraising be that long-term relationship.